It's October, that spooky season where it's expected that you'll have like fright nights and horror paloozas and whatnots. But I'm not one that tends to go for the scare. So when I had a subscriber recommend that I watch Nefarious, I was like, says it's a horror suspense film. I was hoping, and was proven right, that it was more suspense than horror. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't call it horror. I would just call it psychological and suspense. Intriguing, definitely intriguing. But stick around after that open rolls, where I will review the 2023 movie Nefarious. Nefarious came out in 2023 and it runs 1 hour, 37 minutes. Why is this dude messing with his psychology degree so much? Just three times in like a minute. It just seems like overkill. Never mind, he's dead, so I guess it doesn't really matter why he was messing with that psychology degree. Although, since he's gone, I guess it was to emphasize that he's a psychiatrist, psychologist guy, maybe, question mark. Glenn Beck on the radio. Hello, sir. I've always thought it was puzzling how bad guys, especially like serial killers or big like infamous killers, always get called by 3 names. In this case, Edward Wayne Brady. This new psychologist looks like an old Michael Knowles, or an older Michael Knowles. Not that either guy is really all that old. The warden of the prison thinks Brady / Sean Patrick Flannery, although that's funny that I said all 3 of his names too, but whatever, is a faker. And so that's why that the warden needs this new Michael Knowles looking fella to figure it out. Man, Sean Patrick Flannery is so good at this. It's a great introduction for his character. The psychologist is taken aback when Edward Wayne Brady tells him that he chose him to do the psychological evaluation. And because, of course, the psychologist thinks or believes that, you know, it was the state, probably, maybe even the prison itself that hit him up. And Brady tells him that death doesn't scare me because I can't die. I'm a demon, and it's just really good writing. This is it's I like it. Like I really enjoy how condescending and what's another way of putting it? Just intelligent. Sean Patrick Flannery's Edward Wayne Brady is, and I just feel like he's nothing but money. He asks James, the psychologist, says, I can call you Jimmy, right? And I just think that it's funny because he basically is talking down to the psychologist, whatever the role is. The writing of James and Edward are just, it's almost unbelievable. The demon and the skeptic. That's the way that Edward puts it. I enjoy how when Flannery talks about the character, he says we instead of I. It's just a really good choice to clarify that the character believes it is more than one thing. And I like that he says, I want to be executed. It is time for him, the host that the demon is possessing, to go to hell. It's so smartly done, the writing of the film. it's extra funny when the demon says you think your atheism will protect you. Because, that's what the guy says, is, oh, I'm an atheist, as if that's somehow a shield against the facts of the matter when it comes to otherworldly things. It's like, does a lion care if you tell it you don't believe in it? No, it's still going to come tear you up if that's what it desires. I ask myself while they're having this conversation, I said, does Nefarious want Jimmy's body? That would be sensible to me as to the motivation for the demon that is in Edward trying to get a new host, since the goal is to, send Edward Wayne Brady to be executed. The demon is glad that the prison's chaplain doesn't believe in him. He goes so far as to say, I am the most rational being you will ever meet. The demon wants, yep, I was right, it wants invited into James's body. It's insane that he even toys with the idea, James that is, of agreeing to such a crazy proposition. But, I mean, given how smart Nefarious is, I guess it's less crazy than I initially feel. I like that the demon requests permission, but I'm so shocked when he actually gets permission from James to inhabit his body. James is so smug when the demon doesn't take over. James doesn't even realize that there's a reason behind the demon not just immediately entering his body. The demon wants to take part in Edward's execution, and just because somebody doesn't come to your house doesn't mean they're not going to accept your invitation to come on in. So that's what's crazy about how smug James the character is when the demon doesn't take over his body immediately. It almost feels as though it's a justification, like, oh, I'm right, you're wrong. But yeah, and that's not the case, because Sean Patrick Flanery is doing such a good job. This movie reminds me of M. Night Shyamalan's Split, and how that, I think James McAvery is his name, did such a good job portraying more than one character within the same film, and, switching back and forth between characters. And I just have to ask, will we get an M. Night Shyamalan what a twist? The skill at which Sean Patrick Flanery is portraying the demon and also the possessed prisoner makes me want to go back and rewatch one of my favorite shows called The Dead Zone. Within that, Sean Patrick Flanery plays a corrupt politician, also with religious undertones, and he basically, within the context of that story, is the bringer of, maybe not quite the apocalypse, but definitely a bringer of almost the end times, maybe, or a catalyst thereof. Edward believes the demon is the killer. My goodness, the demon knows James had his mother put down. I mean, that's almost the way that it sounds, as if that she was an unwanted, sickly dog, if you will. And a devout atheist bringing a demon story to public. It's so smart that the demon that possesses Edward has put this much thought into what will make his theology meaningful to the human population, that being that a non-believer brings it to light. So many intriguing and smart choices being made. The demon said, now an atheist is arguing the merits of rebellion to the demon. I'm just like, the demon description of hell and man itself it's amazing. It's whoever adapted the book to film really did a good job. And I would assume they have to be a fan of the book because it's been done with such care. The demon is mad that man was made in his image, God. But we remade you in ours, is what Nefarious says. And it's just great line after great line. Because, Dr. James is finding Edward insane, which makes the demon really mad because the demon wants Edward to be put to death. And so Edward then calls out James for he and Melody planning to get an abortion because 35 is too young. How is it that the demon feels like the hero of this movie almost at this point because of him standing up for the life that could be? Now, I get that it's not that the demon actually is the hero, but is just so good at being manipulative. But it's just intriguing that... So the demon tells James early on in the film that before this day is done, you'll be responsible... I think he said responsible for 3 deaths. And James doesn't believe that he's responsible for any deaths until the demon clarifies that in the supernatural world, or spiritual world, however you want to look at it, your choices have consequences, and because James, like I said, basically put down his mom as though she was an animal that was hurting, that's seen as making the wrong choice. And here, with Melody, James is contributing to her ending the pregnancy, which, again, in the supernatural way, that's on you too, James. And so the demon is trying to, I don't think, not so much save the baby as it is use the baby's extinction as a way to just manipulate James's mindset to encourage him to put Edward Wayne Brady to death. The demon laughs, and it really, Sean Patrick Flanery makes it seem as though the demon is going to love being in James's body. It was chilling when the demon did a countdown celebrating the death of James's baby. James, you fool, you damned fool! You're not Melanie's friend. Like, he calls the clinic and says that he's Melanie's friend, but he's not her friend. He's the would-have-been father, and it goes to show how James's whole mindset is warped and messed up toward all of this. Am I supposed to be feeling sympathetic for him? Because there's definitely a part of me that doesn't feel like James is the person. Like, granted, he had a messed up mindset, but it's like, with just a little bit of thought, with a little bit of care, then this could have been avoided. I almost feel more sympathetic toward Edward, who is possessed. Now, they never full-on clarify which one did the deeds that got Edward locked up. Was it just the demon? Was it a little bit of both? I don't know, but James is intensely upset, and he really should be, and because the demon told him a true story, and he didn't want to hear it, and that's what makes the whole second half of the film so compelling, is the idea that it isn't as if Nefarious, the demon possessing Edward, was doing anything other than telling James the truth. And he just didn't want to have any of it. Before I continue on that current critique, that review of Nefarious, I've got to talk to you, the viewer, about why this channel exists. It's because I, Oz, from the channel Mr. Super Oz, I wrote a 68-page graphic novel called Everlasting Survivors. Volume 1 is available. It's called All Day Long. It is a 68-page graphic novel there are 5 cover options, although after the Cincinnati Comic Expo, cover A is sold out and will never be printed again. I guess there is a little bit of a chance maybe I could make some trades, do some deals, get 1 or 2 of them back in circulation. But the thing is, the reason this channel exists, the reason this is going out is because I wrote a graphic novel, and you should click the link in the description to check it out. Back to the review. Nefarious, the demon within Edward Wayne Brady, says to James, "I think I love you." This demon is having so much fun. I fail to see the humor, is what James thinks. You can't even see or feel evil. It's crazy that James still isn't convinced, even after all that Nefarious has demonstrated unto him, especially his knowledge of what he has done. And Nefarious's facial tics are very reminiscent of Heath Ledger's Joker, like the way that he got across the craziness of his Joker. Sean Patrick Flanery pulls a Pete Dunne, now known as Butch in the WWE, on Edward, and he breaks his pinky finger. It's crazy stuff, but because the demon doesn't feel the pain, he gives his body back, or the body back, to the prisoner, so that the demon can enjoy the pain running through the body of the prisoner. I find it interesting that the demon calls the book he wants James to write the Dark Gospel. The Dark Gospel is written to reject the idea of sin completely. James is called to Edward's cell because the interview had been happening like a common area, if you will. And when James gets to Edward's cell, the warden shows James the Dark Gospel, which has already been written, which is another thing that really clarifies a lot of the verbiage that Edward had been saying as the vessel for the demon. Because James is like, how am I going to write your story when you won't tell it to me? He's like, oh, don't worry, I got you, basically. When James confronts the demon about this, he says, was I supposed to be your next victim? And the demon is taken, he's stunned by this. And Nefarious says to James, you're my best friend. All of these performances are just so well executed. At this point is when I start to question where this will fall on the end of year countdown, because I had already said in the current critique of Air, A Story of Greatness, that it's going to take a lot to knock it off from the #1 spot. And, you know, in my mind, Air is still #1 because it is that inspiration, that uplifting, that positive story, especially when it comes to Michael Jordan's mother. But this movie, while, you know, very compelling, is totally different than Air. They're like two different ends of the spectrum when it comes to movies. The thing that Air and Nefarious really hold in common, though, is the exceptional nature in their execution. And so, speaking of executions, James, the psychologist guy, he signs off on the execution of the prisoner, and Nefarious wants James there in the end, at the end of Edward, that is. And James and the warden, they share a smoke. As the warden explains the process, James is gifted with the warden's pack of cigarettes, because the warden knows that James is going to need them, as he puts it, more than he will. The range that Sean Patrick Flanery shows is amazing. The differences between Edward and Nefarious are night and day. It's just a shock to believe that both these performances are not only done by the same actor, but presumably at the same time. I'm so sympathetic toward Edward Wayne Brady, and I'm almost curious if he, the man, is actually innocent and it's the demon that possesses him that did the deed. Although with the explanation that the demon gives to James, it's almost as if one cannot be done without the other. I mean, that can't be done, but the choices that Edward made is what led to Nefarious living within his body as the vessel. So I guess to that degree, it's hard to actually feel sympathy for Edward. But with him being, emotional is what, in the performance that it comes out, is what makes me have that question. The electrocution is nasty. The demon was right. One shock wasn't enough. They are basically cooking the body of Edward, and it's sick stuff. But again, like had been foretold by the demon, it's almost as if the nastiness of the electrocution is getting the body ready for where it is to go, eternal damnation. There's still 14 minutes remaining after the execution. James twitches and is inhabited by Nefarious within the viewing room of the execution, which is, I didn't see that coming. What a crazy finish when James, the psychiatrist, has a gun that he took from the detective who caught Edward, and James tries to kill himself, but the gun, it either had no bullets or misfired or something. I don't know. It was just all kinds of fast-paced, crazy action. The movie itself, it jumps to 1 year later, and Dr. James is on the Glenn Beck program, so calling back to the open of the movie where he was listening to Glenn. And fighting back tears, Dr. James Martin is telling the truth about all that has happened. And it's powerful stuff. He wanted the demon, he wanted it written as an invitation, but James wrote or published the book as a warning. So I give this movie a spectacular rating. It's a 6 out of 5 stars for me. Just so much great execution in storytelling, so much range in performance, and yeah, I'm just big fan of this film overall. Thank you for tuning into this movie review. Come back tomorrow for trivia and on Thursday for comic trivia. Have a good one. Later.